Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jeff from the G League and G League TV, and you're watching the BaseLINE podcast.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the BaseLINE podcast. I'm your host, Ben Line Newman, and you guys may or may not know, but for the last 5 months, I have been interning with the Grand Rapids Gold, who are the NBA G League affiliate to the Denver Nuggets. All I've got to say is that this has been one of the greatest experiences of my life. But what does this have to do with the topic today? Well, by the time that this episode gets posted, the NBA G League regular season will be all said and done, and the NBA G League playoffs will be starting up. And this creates a really nice transition to who we have as our guest today. Now, this man, a few years back, created an Instagram page based on the G League and the news revolving around it. It has really grown from the ground up, currently having 67,000 followers and counting, which now has led him to his current job for the G League as a digital media producer. With that being said, let's welcome our special guest, the creator of the G League TV Instagram page, Mr. Jeff Kee. How are we doing today, Jeff?
What's going on, Ben? I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. Now, just to start it off, Jeff, when did you start this G League TV Instagram page?
You know, I started about 2 years ago. It's probably a little bit less than 2 years ago I started it. So basically what was happening was, I've been following the G League since around 2015. And so that's when I started getting into it. And year by year, I just became a bigger and bigger fan of the league. And so when COVID hit, I really had nothing to do, right? So we were all sitting at home, and I always wanted to start something basketball related. The problem with Instagram or any other social media site is that, there's a million basketball pages, right? So there's a million basketball pages, and they all kind of cover the same thing, right? So, every time LeBron hits 40, they cover LeBron. Every time Steph Curry hits, a 40-foot bomb over two defenders, they post that same thing. So I was like, what can I make that is unique and the platform hasn't really seen yet, and also is indicative of something that I really love? And so that's the reason why I created G League TV. And, I was telling you before that when I first created it, it started off super slow. Probably after the first week, I had, 80 followers, something like that. It took me like 2 months of just consistently posting to probably get 1,000 followers. So it started off super slow. And then when the bubble hit last year, people were looking for G League highlights, G League news. And so that's when the page started really taking off.
For this podcast, obviously, I started an Instagram page for it. I definitely understand where you're coming from. Taking a long time for people to really start recognizing your work. You just have to keep working and working to really get that to where you want it to go. And it's really nice to see that it's finally starting to really grow into where you might want to see it.
For sure. And, the funny thing was that I was talking to my buddies when I made it, and I was like, yeah, even if I can get like a couple thousand followers, that'd be cool, And I remember when I first started getting a couple players following, I thought it was the coolest thing. They weren't even star players, but, when you start something and then all of a sudden 3 or 4 blue checks start following you, you're like, oh my God, right? So that was a super cool feeling. And then as I'm at like 67,000 now. I'm thankful for everyone that follows and engages with the page because, my goal was just to have a couple thousand followers and to build a small community. I didn't realize that it would one day get to 67. So I'm hoping to continue that growth and then one day hopefully hit 100,000.
Oh, definitely. And I feel like in the last few weeks, the number count has really grown. I know last time we checked, it was 2,000 followers less, and that was a big part because one of your videos that you just created actually made it onto the NBA's page, and that video is almost a month old and it already has 4 million views. How does it feel to see your content gain such recognition like that?
Yeah, that's probably the coolest part, tell you the truth, is seeing it on the NBA page, because the NBA is just the standard of what everyone wants to do in their profession who loves basketball. Anyone who loves basketball wants to work in the NBA or be involved in the NBA in some type of capacity. So to see like the NBA reposting stuff that I've made, it's a great feeling, tell you the truth, because that's always been the dream, is to work in the NBA in some capacity, be involved with it, have other players recognize it, and so that's like the coolest part of it.
Oh, definitely. And this video specifically revolves around just the great amount of veterans that are in the G League today. I mean, for the G League, talked about before, but I mean, Isaiah Thomas, Kenneth Fareed, Lance Stevenson, Nick Stauskas were all on our team at one point. Kenneth Fareed is still with us. What is it like to really see all these veterans trying to really get that second chance in the NBA, taking this path for the G League?
Yeah, a few years ago when I first started following the G League, if a veteran came to the league, it was considered like, oh, they're super washed up and they can't get a shot in the NBA. So they're taking this really drastic route in order to get back to the league, right? It's not seen that way anymore, as we can see from this season. Isaiah, I mean, just on the goal, like you said, Isaiah Thomas, Kenneth Fareed, Mario Chalmers for a little bit, Shabazz Muhammad for a couple games back in Showcase, Lance Stevenson. I mean, and then you look around the league, Quinn Cook, Brandon Knight. I mean, they're just everywhere, right? And so that's the great thing, is that it gives our league credibility, right? Where they see these guys who have big names, who have 500,000 followers on Instagram, 1 million followers on Instagram, right? Guys who people know, guys who have accomplished things in the NBA, right? And they've, for whatever reason, gotten themselves out of the league and they're trying to go back. The G League is now considered a super viable route to achieve that dream, whereas a couple years ago, that wasn't the case. But I'm always like a little bit on edge when I see these veterans go to the G League in hopes of getting back to the NBA, because I'm always rooting for the guy who hasn't gotten an NBA chance yet to get to the NBA, And then a lot of time when these veterans come in, they have the big name. They're trying to get to the NBA like right now because they might be 35, 36 years old. And so they come in and they automatically play, 32, 35 minutes per game, right? And that's great for them. And a lot of times it has worked. But I always say to myself, okay, like when Tyreek Evans, I know it didn't last very long, but when he signed with the Herd, what's going to happen with Rajon Tucker's minutes and his touches, right? Same with like Jalen LeCue. What's going to happen with his minutes and his touches? So I'm always like a little bit 50-50 when it comes to those veterans coming back, because it's great for the league, right? But I don't know if it's always great for the development and the chances of other players on that team who are looking for their first shot. I'm just thinking to myself, like when Isaiah came in, right? I thought it was fantastic when Isaiah came in, number one for our league, because everyone for that one game that he was in back in December, everyone was watching then, right? And then when he came back, those 4 games, everyone was watching those, right? So even if it was just strictly for Isaiah Thomas, people were tuned into the G League, which is great for us, right? But remember during those games that he was playing, Quade Green got very few minutes, and he was a big guy in the rotation. Trayvon Duval got very few minutes, and he's another big guy in the rotation. So I'm looking for Trayvon to get to the league. I'm looking for Quade to get himself a chance in the league too. And I'm super happy for Isaiah, but I was like, I hope Isaiah's stint in Grand Rapids doesn't last too long, right? Because all these other guys are looking for those same minutes.
Right, it definitely didn't. I will say though, I mean, as well as anyone that attendance at a G League game can be pretty spotty at times. I just remember those few Isaiah Thomas games though, just how packed the crowd was, how energized seeing Isaiah Thomas just made them, and it was definitely a really cool moment to see for sure.
For sure. And just going back a little bit, I remember when Nate Robinson signed with the Delaware 87ers back in the day, and like I said, the perception of the G League back then was so different because everyone was like, oh, Nate is on his last leg and, he's a little bit washed, even though he was still a good player. But during that season that he was in Delaware, the games were just, I wouldn't say sold out, but there were certainly, at least 5 times the fans that were there on a regular game that wouldn't have showed up. So yeah, it's certainly good for the league and its attendance and revenue and stuff like that.
Jeff, so far throughout your entire career, it's been based around basketball. I mean, you've been a manager, you've done media, you've been a coach, you've done something as simple as game day operation. What is it about the sport of basketball that you just love so much?
You know, I started actually in high school. So when I was in high school, my first job ever, when I was like 16 years old was I was an intern for a minor league team in the Maryland area. And so that really started the love of wanting to work in basketball, because when you're an intern, especially, being in high school and stuff like that, they give you responsibilities, but don't give you like the super hard responsibilities. So they kind of like ease you into it. And, when I was working for that earlier on, I really enjoyed it. And then as I started, getting more and more involved, they started giving me more and more responsibilities. And so even at a young age, 16 years old, I was like, I want to do this as a job. And at the time, most 16-year-olds have no idea what they want to do in life, right? And so that was like my early calling. I was like, I want to work in basketball, really in any capacity, because when you're working at the smaller level, as you probably can tell now, working for the Gold, like you don't really have one responsibility. You have a lot of responsibilities because the staffs are smaller and there's just so much to do at those smaller levels. And so that really like was the trigger for me wanting to get into basketball. And then I went to college and I, was a manager and I worked for another minor league team in college too. And then it kind of snowballed after that. And so the thing that I love most about the game is number one, especially when I was working at UMBC, is the fact of just competing every day, right? Coming into practice, getting better every single day. Game day, there's nothing that beats that feeling of game day, right? As you know now, working for the Gold, coming in, knowing that another team is coming in, that you can compete against them and hopefully win, and that you guys are working towards a championship is like, even if you don't win it, because I've been on some really, really good teams and I've been on some bad teams as well. Even if you don't win it, just the opportunity to compete is something that I really relish. And then number two, being around players and being around young people where, their minds are still growing, right? They're still growing into who they want to be as people and as players, and helping them achieve their goals, whether that's on the court, whether that's like in the classroom too. Because when you're working at the college level, especially, when I was a grad assistant, even though I was only a couple years older than the players, I was required to like help them with schoolwork, you know what I mean? Have like checkups on them and stuff like that because the coach gave me that responsibility. And so it's more about like helping these people develop, and in turn I developed too by helping them, right? And so that was like the biggest takeaway from working with those teams and competing and stuff like that. Now with the G League, I love helping the G League grow. The league is 20 years old, but I still think of it as a startup in some senses, where it's still a young league, and the growth from now and maybe 10 years from now is something that's going to be super exciting, because I feel like 10 years from now, it could be a league that's pretty mainstream, and that's on national television, that people are talking about on ESPN and FS1 and stuff like that, right? And we're not at that point now, but the thing that I'm really looking forward to is helping it grow to get to that point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would definitely love to see that. It's that I don't know if it's really grown more this year compared to other years, just because this is probably the second year I've really gotten into it now that I'm working in this system. But I feel like you said, it's gonna be a very steady growth. We're still very young, and it's gonna be a very steady growth before we're really at that mainstream kind of level.
For sure, for sure. Because when I first started following it in 15, the league, there was 100 people at the games, right? And it was mostly friends, families, mom, dads, and stuff like that. And then there was a bunch of kids there. I don't know if they're like kids of the players or, just random kids in the area that they want to see a basketball game. But, you could really, there was really like a comparable level to a high school game when you used to go to these G League games. And now you see, especially when IT came, the Grand Rapids games were going crazy, right? But even around the league, Santa Cruz, they sell out pretty much every game. I mean, the Maine Celtics have a great crowd. Even now, the Delaware Bluecoats have a great crowd, right? So the league is expanding, and give it 5 years, give it 10 years, right? I really do think it could be a mainstream thing that we see on TV all the time.
Going more into depth with your job at the G League, kind of walk me through what your day looks like. What tasks are you responsible overall on a daily basis, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So at the G League, I'm responsible for basically everything that gets up, whether it's on social media, whether it's on, YouTube, the website. We create all that digital content. And so, and also the G League show. So every Wednesday there's a G League show at 6. And I started off behind the scenes of the show, like helping with like the videos and gathering information and stuff like that. And then just randomly, I got the opportunity to fill in for one of our hosts who couldn't make it one week. And it was like a last second thing where they called me the night before and said, one of the hosts said, "I can't make it. Can you fill in for me?" And it's just by chance that that week we were interviewing Isaiah Thomas, right? So I was like, "Oh, I get to interview IT." So the next day I interviewed IT, and then a couple hours later we had the show, and then literally an hour after the show, IT takes the court for the first time in Grand Rapids, scores that 43 points, and then gets called up to the Lakers, you know? So, and ever since then, I've been on the show. So it started off with, being on that one time, and then I had a small segment that I was on, and now I'm on the show full time from start to finish. So those are basically the biggest things that we do. When playoffs start, we're going to be traveling around, getting a lot of on-site capture. We do a lot of interviews with the players that you'll see like on YouTube, and when the games are showing, especially the nationally televised games, a lot of those interviews will be aired like during timeouts and things of that nature. And so we do everything in between, everything that comes and gets published to um, basically the world, everything that you see about the G League that comes out from the G League side, we publish it.
Now, are those videos posted on YouTube like that? Let's say that Wednesday show, is that going to be posted on Wednesdays on YouTube?
It's actually on Twitch. So it's
Twitch.
Twitch, Instagram Live, and Twitter Live. And
Okay.
so, yep. And so I don't really use Twitch or anything like that, but if you just go on Twitter and you go on the G League page at 6 p.m. on Wednesdays, you can just watch it there.
Going back even further to your jobs at UMBC, I mean, obviously you mentioned it a little bit about what you did there, but maybe going a little bit more depth about your responsibilities there and just overall, what was it like to be able to work for a program like UMBC? For my audience, if you guys don't know who UMBC is or kind of recognize the name, they are known as the only 16 seed to ever be a 1 seed in March Madness.
Yeah, it was two different things working for the men's team and the women's team. On the men's team, basically, on both teams, you do basically all the small work, right? It's essentially all the work that the head coach and the assistant coaches don't want to do, right? And because, when you're a student and you're an undergrad, that could be anywhere from like organizing jerseys to like helping with film, to helping with school and stuff like that, the players. It could be even picking up players from like the airport, right? It's just anything in between, picking up meals, anything that the team needs to operate. And a lot of people don't want to do that type of work, right? Because they're thinking, oh, if I'm working for a basketball team, I should be helping with like the game plan and practice. That is certainly a part of the job as well, right? But there's a lot of stuff, especially when you're at a mid-major or even like a low major D1 school, right? Where there's a lot of things you have to do in order to make the team run, I would say this: when you work at the college level and the G League level too, you have to be a jack of all trades. There can be nothing you say no to. Essentially, you have to have skills and everything, right, in order to succeed, because there's just so many tasks they'll give you at a really wide range. And a lot of the people that I've worked with have gone on to, work in higher college levels. Some are pursuing jobs in like the NBA and stuff like that. So, when you work at that level and you basically get so many skills because they make you do so many things, it prepares you for other careers as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this is what I like about the working at the Gold is that I've done pretty much every job from working the soundboard to running the music 50-50. Sometimes I'm even the guy that throws, the free t-shirts, being able to prepare for every single job, I think definitely helps for future opportunities for sure.
For sure, for sure. And, at the time, and I still kind of do want to, at the time I was like, maybe I'll become a coach, right? And so when I was in school, every day being in practice, I would learn from Coach Hayes on the women's team, Coach Odom on the men's team, right? Seeing them every day in practice, I was like, okay, if I can take away one thing per practice, then all of a sudden, if I do this every single day, I'll have, 500 things per year, because I'm at men's practice in the morning, women's practice in the afternoon, right? I'll have like 500 things per year if I take one thing per practice that I can take along with me. That's basketball knowledge, right? And so, yeah, there was so much that went into it, both on the basketball side and on the business side too.
Now, going even further than that, before your time at the G League, before your time at UMBC, you were actually an assistant coach for Mount Zion Prep. You were there just a year prior to the 2022 Slam Dunk champion, Mr. Obi Toppin. Talk about that experience.
Yeah, so that was a year before Obi was there. I'm sorry, that was a year after Obi was
Year
there.
after, okay.
Yeah, year after Obi was there. And so when I got there, we had a really good team. So Mount Zion Prep, we were nationally ranked that year. We were high as 3 in the nation. And then we finished at like 9th place or something like that. So we were still in the top 10. We made the National Prep Championship tournament. We had a really good team where everybody but 3 players went D1. So we had like 11 guys that went to go play Division I basketball. And some are pursuing careers, overseas as well. Some of them want to go to the G League. A couple of them this past year averaged like 15, 16, 17 points a game. So these were good players, and they're good players now at the D1 level. But yeah, we were there. I was there the year after Obi, and I remember at the time he wasn't a star at all. Not at all, right? He was a redshirt freshman at Dayton. He wasn't even playing. And they kept talking about, the coaches there kept talking about this guy that was going to be a star. No one knows about him, but he's going to be a star. And they always would talk about Obi Toppin, Obi Toppin, Obi Toppin. And I just knew his name so well because they'd be like, we have this guy, and they would tell the media this. They would talk about it. We have this guy who we think could make the NBA, And it wasn't like, oh, we have this guy who's going to be an NBA star or be a future slam dunk champion. We have this guy that we think could make the NBA, because coming from a school like ours, anybody, if you're just getting to the NBA level, that's a huge accomplishment. Maybe at like Oak Hill or a school of that nature, IMG, right? They have players that go to the NBA all the time. At Mount Zion, we're a smaller school and we had a really good run. But we're not used to like producing NBA players. And so lo and behold, Obi Toppin blows up at Dayton. He wins the A10 freshman of the year. I was like, oh my God. And then that summer, I see that he was training with Chris Brickley and CJ McCollum. And I was like, wait, this is actually like pretty serious. And CJ McCollum, I remember on that post, said he's an NBA player right now, right? And then the next year at Dayton, he wins National Player of the Year, and he just really blows up. And him making the league was like huge for the Mount Zion program, because it gives the program so much credibility too. And then on top of that, we had another guy, Tariq Owens, who played for Texas Tech. He and Matt Mooney and Jarrett Culver as well, were big on that team that ended up making the national championship game that lost to Virginia. And Tariq played a little bit in the NBA. He had like a 2-way contract with Phoenix. He played in a couple games with the Suns, and then he was in the G League too. So, we've had 2 guys that played in the league, and hopefully more. Hopefully the guys that I worked with there somehow find their way in the G League, and if they're lucky enough and work hard enough, maybe the NBA. But yeah, Obi is like the pride and joy of our school. So every time you talk to our coaches back in Mount Zion, the first thing they tell you within 5 minutes of meeting them is like, oh, Obi Toppin? Have you heard of him? I coached him, right? So like, he's definitely the pride and joy of the school.
I'm sure. I mean, it's crazy. I never thought I would ever be able to know anybody that plays a professional sport. Xavier Tillman, for example, on the Grizzlies, he's from Grand Rapids area. Like, I never thought I would ever be able to watch someone play in high school now go on to play in the pros.
Yeah, I think that's like the coolest thing about working in sports, is meeting people that you otherwise wouldn't get the chance to, and meeting people who are like super accomplished in their field. Growing up, I feel the same way. When I was in high school and I was working for that minor league team, these guys were good players. A lot of them played overseas. Most of them played D1. One of them won a national championship in college. And so, but these guys, when I was 16 years old, to me were like kings, right? And a lot of them didn't even come close to the NBA level. Some of them played like summer league and stuff like that, but most of them did not even come close to the NBA level. But when you're that age, meeting any ball player who had pro experience was like a huge accomplishment for me. You know what I mean? And now it's really cool interacting with G League players, guys who were accomplished as well overseas, and then guys who played in the NBA. It's like the ultimate dream, because when you're a kid, you never think it's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Jeff, going back to your Instagram page, GLeagueTV, I want to know, what are your favorite stories to create? Is it what stats players get on a night? Is it the relevant stories, or is it more so like the specific stories? Like, I believe it was the Kenny Wooten one you guys just posted a few days ago about his blocks. I thought that was a great one. What are your favorite stories to create in your opinion?
I think my favorite ones to create are the guys that don't really have much of a name, in basketball, and they're still building their way up. And a lot of those guys play D2 ball. Some in the G League play D3, like Eric Demers on the Maine Celtics. He's one of my favorite players this year because he was the leading scorer in D3. So he was putting up like 32 points per game. In college, they played, the D3 teams always play D1 teams to start the year. And he had like a 42-point game against the D1 team. So this guy can really go. But of course, playing D3, he's not going to get the attention that he commands because at that level, you just don't get a lot of guys who are playing at the pro level, right? And so he has of course, going undrafted, and he played summer league, he played decently well, and then has really found a home with the Maine Celtics this year off the bench. And so guys like him are guys that I really like to cover. Now, granted, it's not really always what the public wants. Like the public also wants to see like the stars as well, right? So especially the G League alum who have played in the G in the past and are now killing it in the NBA. Like people love seeing Kevin Porter Jr. People love seeing what Jordan Poole is doing now. Even like guys like Tyus Jones who played in the G League back in the day. Guys like that who are, I wouldn't say like stars by any nature, but they're good players, they're good role players on good teams. People like seeing that. But I really try to focus 50-50 on those type of guys and also the guys that don't really have much of a name because I feel a level of like responsibility to put their stories out there too, and a lot of the stories in the G League are really crazy that you wouldn't see, in the NBA as well. Like, some of these guys, like I said, played low level division 2 or 3 basketball. A lot of them have had really crazy journeys overseas and then have come to the G League in order to give it an opportunity. Some of these guys were like working in supermarkets a few years ago and then we're trying to play pro ball, whether it's semi-pro ball at the same time, and then tried out for a G League team and end up making it. I love Craig Sword on the Capital City Go-Go because just a few years ago, he's been in the G League for a little while, but just a couple of years ago, he was playing semi-pro ball in Omaha, right? In Omaha, Nebraska. And that's not somewhere where I've ever heard a basketball player going in order to hoop, you know what I'm saying? And so he was playing semi-pro basketball in Omaha. And then this year he comes back to the G League, plays super well for Capital City. And his 4 years in the G League, he's never averaged over 10 points a game. His thing is he's a defensive stopper, so people wouldn't look at his numbers and say, oh, this guy's a star. But the thing that he does, he fits well into any team because of just how hard he competes on the defensive end. And at maybe 28, 29 years old, he gets his first call up to the NBA. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that is why I love the G League because there's all these underdogs in there who have really interesting stories. They don't really get called out in the mainstream media. And I feel, like I said, a certain responsibility to help call those out.
I definitely love how relevant you guys try to get with these stories. I mean, I don't remember what the player's name was, but you guys posted like the only St. Peter's guy in the G League.
That's right.
Talking about former gold Matt Ryan getting his Celtics debut. I mean, I love those kind of stories for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I spend a certain amount of time per day just going through Twitter because I follow all these guys on Twitter. And if they have like an interesting quote or something like that, a lot of these guys tweet like I don't know if I can characterize it as like emotional, but like motivational stuff for them. How about that? Where it's like, I will be in the NBA one day. I will be on an NBA roster one day, and that stuff makes for like really good headlines because they're putting it out to the world, basically kind of like manifesting that they'll get to that opportunity, and Matt Ryan was a guy that did in the past where he was like, my goal is just to play one game in the NBA, just to put on that jersey. Right. And then he gets his 2-way with the Celtics. And then before you know it, he didn't play the other day, but it was his first day actually putting on the jersey and being on an NBA bench. So regardless, it's a win for him.
With the success you created with GLeagueTV, what is your favorite arena that you've been able to travel to? And similarly, who is the best player that you've been able to watch play in the G League with your own eyes?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, my goal when I was younger was to go to every single NBA arena, you know what I mean? And watch a game there. But now that I'm working in the G League, my goal is to go to every single G League arena. It's not even at the NBA anymore. I just want to go to every single G League arena, be able to watch a game there. I haven't this year actually been able to go to like as many as I had hoped, right? Because a lot of times we're, covering all the games and we're just covering them either from like the office or the home or at home and stuff like that. And then somewhere like in between we'll travel to games and things of that nature. But I still go to a ton of like Blue Coat games. I go to Capital City games all the time. We were at Showcase in Vegas couple months ago, and that was just the time of my life because we had all the G League teams in the same complex, right? And they were all competing for the Showcase Cup. And it was just like you could walk down the hall and you'd see Anthony Lamb on the Vipers, and you'd walk down to get breakfast and you'd see Nick Stauskas on the Gold. You know what I'm saying? So you just the players were everywhere, and it was every single team there. But my goal is to go to every single arena. Like I really want to go to Santa Cruz because they sell it every single game, and their environment is like going to a Golden State Warriors environment, just in a smaller arena, and so I really want to go there, main Celtics game. And I just want to go travel all around because my favorite actually is the Texas Legends, because if you follow them on social media, the Texas Legends, after every single game, they allow all the fans on the court. It's mostly kids, but all the fans on the court and all the players sit down. They have like autograph signings, and then the players are always giving away like their shoes and jerseys. Every game, the players give away their shoes, right? And I'm like, usually at the G League level, you don't see that because they don't have just an open closet full of merchandise to give away. But I'm not sure what they have in Texas where they allows them to give away their stuff all the time. But and so I love like the small fan environments like that, the family friendly environments that allow people to really like engage with the players. So that's my goal, is to, I haven't even come close to scratching that goal yet, but my goal is to go to all the G League arenas and see all the teams play at home.
Well, for next season, you're welcome in Grand Rapids anytime.
I appreciate it, and I will make my way up there for sure.
What players have been some of the greatest players that you've been able to cover, interview, etc.?
Yeah, my favorite all time is Christian Wood. And so actually, if you just scroll down my Instagram, it's somewhere in there. I have a picture with myself and Christian Wood back from maybe like 2016. And I think at the time he was playing for the Greensboro Swarm, and they had come to a game in Delaware. And I took a picture of him after the game. And at the time, he had no name. You know what I mean? Like, he was in and out of the league. He was on a couple of two ways. It didn't really work out. Because on those two ways, guys sometimes spend most of the time in the G League, and he was certainly one of those guys. And it was only until maybe 2 or 3 years later that he really blew up with the Pistons and then ended up signing with the Rockets. So a guy like him, I've seen him from, his dog days in the G League to now. And so he's probably my favorite. But, over the years, like, especially watching Gary Payton II come in and out of the G League. And, I was always like, this guy's an NBA defender, but I understand that people want scorers nowadays too. He just has to find, the right niche of a team to be on, where his skill set really shines. And so watching him in the league, and I saw him live a couple of times too, was pretty crazy. Certainly Nate Robinson, he was playing that 1 year in the G League. This year, I love watching Miles Powell play in Delaware because I catch a lot of their games. And he's a guy that I think he's on his two-way now with the Sixers, and he's a guy that I think could be on an NBA roster permanently in the next couple of years. And he just has a chance of, being a 10 points per game player off of anyone's bench. Guys like him can just get hot in a second, whether they play 10 minutes or 15 minutes, he could get you 8 to 10 points. And so I would say like guys like that, I really enjoyed watching. Elysium Johnson, another one too, when he was on the Mad Ants. And then when he was on the Raptors 905 last year, he was just a dog, and he was the guy that was going to get you 20 points and like 13, 14 rebounds every single night. And actually, funny story about Elysium Johnson. So when I started up my G League TV page, I would always cover Alizé, because his stat lines basically every game would be, 22 points, 15 rebounds, right? And, sometimes a lot of that stuff didn't get covered on the main G League page. And so I would always feature Alizé, and he was always super appreciative. He would always share the stuff whenever I would post them and stuff like that. So that was actually more incentive for me to post them, the fact that he would share and engage with the stuff. And then when he got signed by the Brooklyn Nets, he actually sent me one of his jerseys. So his game worn jersey, I have it hanging up over there. His game worn jersey, I have it in my room, and it's signed on the back, and it says like at G League TV, like, thank you for the love, Elysium Johnson. It was his game worn jersey. So like that was one of the coolest things. So he'll always be one of my favorite players just because of that.
I love that. I mean, my buddy and I love Elysium Johnson. I don't remember where he went to college, but when he and I were still at Bradley, whatever team he was on actually played Bradley, and we thought, like, we looked at this guy and it was like, wow, this guy looks like a combination of Russell Westbrook and Jimmy Butler, just in the looks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And we were like, you know what, we're gonna follow this guy now, and now he's in the NBA on a roster, and it's just kind of crazy to see him in college, and then now he's finally made it to a permanent spot on a roster.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, people say he looks like Lamar Jackson. That's what they always compare him to.
Yeah, yeah.
But his play style, I mean, I've never seen, I can count on one hand the players in the league that I've seen since 2015 that have a higher motor than him. He's just always on go. That's always on go. And that's what you look for in a player when you're a coach or you're a GM. You're looking for guys that just compete super hard all, 30 minutes that they're in the game. And he's a guy that does exactly that. I mean, this guy he has no quit in him. He's undersized a little bit. He's like 6'7", but to get 13, 14 rebounds at 6'7" year in and year out for 3 straight years, I mean, is really impressive, and then he got called up to Brooklyn, and then within 2 weeks, he had a 2020 game, right, at the NBA level. He's been bouncing around a little bit. This year, he's played on, like, the Bulls, the Pelicans, the Wizards, and that's just part of the journey is, like, you go wherever you're wanted, and sometimes that's for 10 days, sometimes that's for, a couple months, sometimes that's for the whole year. But, I'm sure that he'll find a home in the league, kind of like GP. He just needs to, like, bounce around a little bit to really find a place where they really appreciate his skill set.
With your G League TV page, you've been pretty prevalent in media throughout your career. In your opinion, why is media coverage so crucial in the world of sports, especially in a league like the G League where coverage is not as prominent?
Yeah, for the G League, social media coverage is huge because otherwise people wouldn't even know what's going on, right? Because our games are not televised. Well, they are. I mean, they're televised on like ESPN Plus, right? So if you don't have an ESPN Plus subscription, you're out of luck in that sense. They are on the G League page, right? But I don't know how many people are going to NBAGleague.com and watching the games consistently. Maybe if IT comes back or something like that, then they would do that. But for these normal games where there's no real headliners, there's no players that were really like pushing per team, like superstars in that sense. I don't think a lot of people are visiting the site to watch the games. And so, because they're not watching the games on the site and because a lot of people don't have an ESPN Plus subscription, having it on social media and covering all these players is really the way that people know about them. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't follow the G League at all, but they can just come to our page and they can say, oh, I've seen this player consistently pop up. Oh, he must be a pretty good player. And then when they get to the NBA level, they're like, oh, wait, I saw him on the G League pages, right? I saw him being posted there consistently. I know how he plays a little bit. I know his play style. And for that reason alone, it's worthwhile because when these guys do get to the NBA level, they will have a little bit of familiarity with the fan bases that follow them to an extent. So, it is super important, more actually important in our league than any other league because, people are following everything about the NBA, whether that's online, especially on TV, right? Every night there's an NBA game, right? But it's not the case for the G League. So in that sense, we have to be on our P's and Q's when it comes to social media usage and coverage because that makes it so much more important for our league.
Right, because like with a league like the NBA, I mean, I'm pretty sure at least on Instagram, the NBA has the most followers out of any of the 4 sports. So they can post anything and they'll be able to get the coverage that they need. Where I feel like for you guys, you might need to be a little bit more strategic with how you post and what you post.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about the NBA is that the NBA has become such a machine that, every time that they post something, it gets, 500,000 likes, right? Just off the bat. I mean, they could post just a picture of a white box or something like that. You know what I mean? And it would get 200,000 likes. That's just the NBA and what it's come to. It's grown so much. But on the G League side, it's so much different where, we really have to like not pick and choose, but we do have to be more strategic about what we post, right? Because a lot of the stuff, sometimes the stuff will bang, sometimes it won't. It just depends on like how popular that player is or what the content is really covering. And so, yeah, it's so much different from the NBA. We're certainly the little brother of the NBA where we don't get the coverage. I feel like that, certainly that the NBA has grown into, right? We don't have a tenth of that yet. We don't even have like 5% of that coverage yet. So our goal is certainly to get to that level where the average basketball fan is hopefully covering or following the G League and what's going on with our players.
Yeah, definitely. Now, final question for you, Jeff. Obviously, you've put in the hard work. You've really grinded to get to where you wanted to go in your career. For someone who might want to create a similar social media page to G League TV, what advice would you give to them to try to gain a following?
Yeah, that's a great question. My first advice would be just start the page, right? Because there's a lot of people that I message with and I talk to, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about starting this page. I don't really know what to do. I don't know if people will follow." I'm like, "Dude, just start it, right? Because start it and then see where it takes you." The biggest thing is you do have to be super consistent with it, and you have to have like some will to like not give up when things are super slow, as they were for me in the beginning. I mean, after the first week, I had like 85 followers, right? And I was like, dang, I thought this was really gonna bang because I was putting up like 3 videos per day, and they were getting like 120 views, right? They were getting like 20 likes now after the first week, and I was like, dang, this is going a lot slower than I'd hoped. And the players the first week didn't share any of them. I was like, oh, if I tag these small players in it, they'll share it, but they weren't for whatever reason and then they got bigger and they all started sharing it. So you have to be super consistent with it, and then when it's slow in the beginning, which it certainly will be, you have to kind of like fight through that and be like, okay, if I can continue consistently putting out, people will come, right? And I think the biggest thing that I tell people all the time when they want to start something is figure out a way that you can be different. You know what I mean? Because as I was saying before, on Instagram at least, there's a million basketball pages, right? And they all cover the same topics. I mean, when Dame Lillard hit that shot to beat the Thunder back in, was it 2019? I saw that shot on every single basketball page that I followed. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, it was a great shot, but I don't want to see it 20 times. You know what I mean? Because I'm already seeing it on TV. Then when I scroll through Instagram, it's Dame Lillard, Dame Lillard, Dame Lillard. So you have to find a way to separate yourself from that pack, because if you just post that same stuff, you'll be clumped in with those certain pages that do the same thing. And I always tell myself, like, you do not want to be posting stuff that ESPN posts. You do not want to be posting stuff that Bleacher Report posts, because you're a smaller page. And if people want that news and that information, they'll go to Bleacher Report, right? They're not going to go to the small page. They're going to go to Bleacher Report or ESPN or SportsCenter, those pages. So find a niche where, only that you really know about and that's not really being covered online. And trust me, like, over time you will grow, because there's a certain fan base for every single category, whether it's the G League, whether it's the WNBA, whether it's the ball league in Africa right now that just started up. There's someone that's certainly interested in that. It's just about finding that group and really capitalizing off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to keep seeing this G League TV page grow.
Ben, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And that's going to wrap it up for us today, guys. Thank you so much to Jeff for coming on to the podcast. Definitely follow G League TV. The link to that Instagram page is going to be down in the description below, as well as the links to the G League Wednesday show, as well as the G League YouTube page. Thank you guys so much for the support of this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please like, please subscribe, please share this with a friend. I would love to continue to grow and gain more viewership as we go along in this podcast. Thank you once again to Jeff Kees. My name is BaseLINE Newman. You've been watching the BaseLINE podcast, and I will talk to you guys next time.